Aloha. Aloha. Ha is the breath of life. So you breathe life into the auditorium by saying that. And mahalo to Ryan and Jack and ESRI for this opportunity to speak to you today. I truly appreciate it. It gives me a reason to journey away from the islands, which I don't do very often for good reasons. But I'm here to present to you on what I think is a very exciting tool. You've seen it this morning, the ArcGIS Urban tool. We are one of the early adopter programs, and how we're using it to assess land use redevelopment proposals that are happening in urban Honolulu. I'd first like to say thanks to Sylvia Casas, who I worked her so hard, she's out sick. She was really the lead of our project, and I truly appreciate all the effort that she put into it. We couldn't have done it without her. Caitlin Smith, who talked earlier today, Rhonda Moran, and Ryan Laws from my staff. Now, the first thing I understand, there is a price to paradise. The basics of this presentation was in this project was to develop a system that can address some of the basic issues and questions that we're having in Honolulu. Our community lacks affordable housing, probably very similar to many municipalities that are throughout the nation. And we're wondering, could changes in our zoning ordinances influence the housing market, and what would result from any of these changes? And we also, when we were beginning to get into this, we not only wanted to quantify what the problems were happening and how we might be able to address them, we wanted to be able to also visualize it as well. So we have this project vision, and the vision has multiple purposes. It's to establish data and tools that help us better understand our communities. And the basic purpose of it was, or one of the multiple purposes of it was, to create a system that maintains and manages our physical urban landscape data, basically our building structure data. And because we need that if we are to do any kind of assessing of alternate land use zoning and site development proposals. And finally, we define a specific project or product, and that product being various and alternate scenarios that can evaluate the proposals to redevelop an existing low-rise apartment zoning districts. So what you see here is this area that what would be a apartment low-rise district. Now, we are attempting to develop this system using the latest in 3D technology, the ArcGIS Urban. 3D isn't new. Honolulu's done a lot with 3D over the years. We started with ArcGlobe, we brought in pictometry, we brought in Precision Lightworks, we used City Engine to illustrate urban sprawl for our transit-oriented development proposals. But this is a new tool that allows us to do mass changes of features based on various zoning and regulatory code changes. So this presentation is about the possibilities of using these advanced 3D tools for performing geodesign studies. Now, I want to emphasize why buildings are important, and why is it important that we track, manage, and maintain this new building data. The economic value and impact of these projects are significant in the impact that they can have on a community. These charts are from our permitting system dashboard and illustrate the small portion of building permits can account for a substantial amount of the construction industry economy. So in the year 2018, we had over 14,000 permits issued. Of that, only 1,000 of those permits were new buildings. But that accounted for almost 30% of the entire value of the accepted value of the construction. So you can see that the new buildings have a heavy influence on the economy and the construction industry that's occurring in Honolulu. Now, as I dug deeper into this, we found that the apartments and new building apartments, which is only 0.2% of all of our new building permits, or excuse me, 0.2% of all building permits, accounted for 10% of the total accepted value. So the realization that we had on this is that the apartment development contributes a significant amount of benefits to our local economy, as well as to our housing supply. So we put this project together using the geodesign methodology. In a local government sense, we're really only now beginning to apply this. And we're only really in the first loop only. And so this is kind of a pilot project that we want to use for other redevelopment proposals we know are coming down the line. So we want to make sure everyone has an understanding of the landscape. So we need to describe the landscape. So here is the island of Oahu. Using ArcGIS Urban, we're getting in to take a look around, and you can see that the city and county of Honolulu, which encompasses the entire island of Oahu, has a population of about 1 million people, just under 1 million people. We're focusing in on the urban area, what we call the primary urban center. So this stretches basically from Waikiki on your right to the downtown area on your left. We're now doing, and bringing in the building structures that we have. We have this for the entire island, and we updated it through this particular project. And here we're bringing in our major construction projects. This is a list of projects that are being developed that we provide to the mayor on a monthly basis. And we can go through these projects and filter through them and find those projects that are under construction or have some other type of status that we may be interested in. So we can see all the projects that are under construction. Now, one of the things I wanted to show was, and one of the things I'm really excited about after being at this Geodesign Summit last year, was the incorporation of BIM into our models. That blue building is a Revit file that we recently got, and using ArcGIS Pro, we were able to convert that file and publish a service and attach that service to this ArcGIS project. So now we have that project as part of our landscape, and we can see what the impact may be. This is also very important for us because we're looking at using this as a way of improving not only our plan review process, but also our permitting review process. Now we're going to start looking at where our plan is at, our low-rise affordable walk-ups. So the specific proposal we had was, it actually came from developers to say we need to redevelop these low-rise apartment districts to allow for higher heights, greater heights, and greater density. So the proposal, so bringing the data in as the baseline for what it is we want to study, we find that, lot area size, building height, and the maximum density, the 4.0 floor area ratio, FAR, was significantly higher than what we had in our previous standards. What this proposal basically intends to create are 5-story apartment complexes that are considered walk-ups. And walk-ups basically mean no elevator. So this is what the development and the development community wanted to promote. One of the first questions that comes from the planners is how many parcels are being affected? And Rhonda put together this web map that shows the number of parcels that fall within the apartment zoning districts. And these zoning districts can vary across the island, and so this web map is also dynamic and can adjust based on the area that you're looking at. So what we found was the location where the greatest impact may occur. And this area is known as Mo'ili'ili. Okay, how many I's can you get into one word? Mo'ili'ili. So how does Mo'ili'ili currently operate? It is in an area surrounded by high-rise residential. If you look at the photo on the right, its upper left corner is basically pointing to the area of Mo'ili'ili. So you can see kind of this low-rise area in between all the high-rise residential and high-rise resort that exists in that area. These are typical walk-up units. These are what exists today. We currently permit 3-story walk-ups. And you can see in the area that there are a lot of small buildings, there are a lot of small lots in high density. And most of this residential has been developed into small apartment complexes, like even the house has been developed into a multi-unit housing unit. This is not a low-income neighborhood, but it is becoming more unaffordable for middle class and young adults. This is an area where a lot of people like to live who work in Waikiki or go to school at the University of Hawaii. So here is the study area. And you can see the apartment zoning extends, well, first off, it's showing Mo'iliili, and then you're going to see this brown area that basically defines the A2 zoning. What we're first looking at is just the existing structures, and now we're bringing in the business as usual. And we'll come back to that more, but the point here is to say that you can see the zoning extends beyond our study area. And one of the challenges we had was in creating existing zoning that had to accommodate conditional FARs. So the idea that a single zoning class, such as apartment or A2, would have various FARs based on the size of the lot. So ESRI was very creative in saying, well, let's break those out into individual zoning classifications. So we actually have multiple zoning classes for the A2 zoning. Now we bring in the zoning envelopes, which is crucial in visualizing the height conditions that are acceptable in that area. This is also important because it provides us the ability to identify any development that violates the zoning rules and height conditions. So now we're trying to assess how well our community is working as we're going through the geodesign process. And some of those parameters include housing costs. $770,000 is our median value. I'd like to point out that the rentals in Honolulu have an average price of $1,670 per month. There is limited land, there's sustainability issues, and most development has to happen outside of Honolulu, which requires a great deal of transportation. Other indicators that we're having some problems is inappropriate development. Honolulu has a monster problem with monster houses. These are units that are being constructed in many areas of our city under residential building code. And you can see one of these units has up to 29 bedrooms. This is the type of development, these types of development meet building code and are permitted. But this is illustration of a trend where I believe that building code reviews are becoming more discretionary than they are ministerial. Code compliance has become more subjective and open to interpretation. Now this is an ugly map, but this quantified and substantiated a hunch I had. One of the last measures I thought would be useful is the number of building violations that occurred in 2018. And the hotspot lands basically right on the Mo'iliili area. So the proposals that were coming out, how did they want to alter it? Here's an illustration of a 5-story low-rise walk-up. Now, the AIA conducted a charrette using Legos to develop illustrations of what a five-story walk-up would be. So we had to say, this has to be a better way. So finally, we're now going to analyze this low-rise walk-up proposal. We start with the existing conditions in buildings, and then we'll begin by comparing the existing to the business as usual. What kind of build-out could occur using the A2 zoning standards? As you can see, it's a very low-rise development potential. Much of this area had been developed before these zoning codes had been put in place. We then changed to the low-rise walk-up proposal scenario. And the first thing that you're going to see is not all parcels are going to be affected because they don't meet the size requirements, or they exceed the size requirements. Then we're going to, well, I'll let this, and as it crunches through here, so the first thing, we're redeveloping over, several hundred parcels. So it's crunching through and bringing up that low-rise water, what it would look like under those proposed standards. And what you see is a major lift in the heights of the developments that could happen there. Now, when we did this, and we used some other zoning rules, like what we're doing here is we modified the low-rise walk-up, and we increased setbacks, we doubled the size of the setbacks, and what you'll see is a little reduction in the density. But when we did this and showed this to the planners' eyes got big. They said, wow, we can redevelop, we can evaluate all these zoning proposals, and we showed them other extreme examples like using downtown building codes. And they got all excited. So what I'd like to say is that we hooked the planners, like a mahi-mahi. We had the planners hooked. They want access to this now. This is working. So we're now in the process of getting this out to more of the stakeholders that could use it. And the last video I have here is intended to address the geodesign question of what difference will these changes cause? And as shown earlier today, these analyses can be compared with performance metrics and indicators. So in our business as usual scenario, we can see the estimated population metric we included in this test. Oops, I didn't hit start, sorry. So here are the capacity, and we only had a few that we've gotten into this scenario so far, but the business as usual brings up some of the basic metrics that we had available. Then we go to another scenario. So we go to the low-rise walk-ups. And we can see that actually the population decreased, primarily because there's less number of parcels that can be used for development. Then we go to Sylvia's scenario. And Sylvia, who's developed this in California, has another scenario, and you can see other developments that could occur there. Then we go to Ryan's scenario, who's in Honolulu. So here's the idea of being able to do these kind of scenario sampling and analyses from wherever you're at. And I believe this is one of the real powers of the system, is being able to get people involved in doing the scenario planning and not having to have them all in one room at one time. And if we looked at the metrics and said, if we're basing it based on population, household, and jobs, Ryan wins. So what now? Well, the current proposals are with our planning commission. The project is now being tested by our planners. Changes in our LUR are happening with more substantive changes coming. They're going to be rewriting our land use ordinance. And so by working with, one of the planners I hooked on this project is the land use planning division chief, by showing them what they could do with this. So there's all these proposals that are being brought forward to us from city council and the state legislature. And we want to work with all of the community stakeholders in sharing this information. Finally, the last thing is, I found this sign. I was driving through Mo'iliili one day, and there's a construction wall, there's a construction site, and they had this mural on it, and they had this sign there that describes what they love about Mo'iliili. And one of the things that we see is there's all this redevelopment pressure happening within our urban environments. Geodesign is critical to ensuring that we can do these redevelopments, but be sensitive to the cultural and the historical background that are happening in our communities. And Jack talked about change this morning, and I had this title in here already, that change is constant. They're going to change it. We're not going to stop them from changing it. But maybe we can help make it beautiful. And that's what I really hope we can get out of these tools in the geodesign program. So thank you.